Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel. I'm so glad you've joined me this evening. I've got a fantastic story for you, which you're really going to enjoy. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because you'll be so glad you did, because I've got such lovely stories lined up for you, all about our favourite character, Bigfoot. So let's get started. It was in the fall of 1995 when I had my Bigfoot encounter in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is where I live. I was 22 at the time and I still lived with my parents, who lived in a small house on a few acres of natural forest. As I was getting older, I wanted my own place, but to still live in close proximity to my parents. So I asked my father if I could build a tree house further in the forest that I could call my own abode, so to speak. I had the perfect spot in mind, 3 very strong redwood trees of extensive size in a prime position that overlooked a pretty little creek, rolling hills and ubiquitous trees. It would mean I would have great views of natural wildlife. What was there not to like? I also wanted to make the access to the house as discreet as possible, with little steps built into the tree that were not very visible to the naked eye. In other words, I wanted to be living in a home 100 feet off the ground that hopefully nobody knew was there. My father was not keen about the treehouse idea, especially the part of discreet access. You would need a proper staircase up and down the tree for shopping and so forth, he explained. My mother agreed with my father and would have much preferred a sensible option of me choosing to have a cabin or cottage in the woods. The idea of a relatively inaccessible treehouse did not score many brownie points with her. In a few years' time you'll regret it, she warned me. You are young and impractical, full of these novel, contrary ideas that will be short-lived once you get older and wiser. My father agreed, but finally, after much persuasion, he agreed that I could build a treehouse, much to my delight. My best friend, Casey, so happened to be in the treehouse business that was starting to increase in popularity in North America, so I had the best man to help me for the job. Like my dad, Casey was not keen about my discreet steps up to the tree idea, but he finally relented to my eager pleas and helped me design the perfect treehouse. Once it was finished, it had everything I could have ever asked for, and more than anything, it was the perfect man cave for me, with all the mod cons, anything a bloke could ever need. Even my parents thought the treehouse was a work of art. When you got to the top and gazed out of the large glass windows, you would see the most spectacular views for miles around. Every morning when I would wake up, I would make a steaming cup of hot coffee and just sit there with my binoculars and observe all the wildlife. I began to see birds I'd never seen before, and animals that are sometimes so reclusive they are rarely seen by humans, like a black panther and a mountain lion. I loved the peace and serenity of my new life, and of course the independence it brought me. One morning when I looked out of my window, I saw a herd of deer dashing away from the creek. Something had clearly terrified them, and I wondered what it could be. I felt a sense of growing excitement stirring within me, like you would get on a wildlife safari when you see the lion stalking its prey. That was the kind of feeling I had. I waited for a while and I saw nothing, and just when I was about to give up my viewing to make another cup of coffee, my eyes suddenly caught a glimpse of movement coming from some dense-looking shrubbery that I knew to be filled with thorny bushes. Surely nothing could come through that, I thought. You'd have to have rhino skin to get through those sharp needles without it shredding your skin to pieces. Yet again I saw movement, and a black hazy blur came barging speedily through the thick undergrowth with brute force. What on earth is that, I wondered. Then I saw it. At first I really did not know what I was looking at, because this thing, whatever it was, looked like a mass of black dredgelocks. What the heck is that, I wondered, as the creature stood up on 2 thick legs that supported a massive torso, shoulders and chest. I noticed the arms were way too long to be human, and the creature possessed hands, not paws. I immediately put on my binoculars to get a better view of the strange creature, the likes of what I have never seen before. I focused my lens on the creature, and I could see a cone-shaped head perched directly on the shoulders, bypassing any obvious need for a neck. The face was human-like but not human, and ape-like but not ape. It was as if this creature was a blend of great ape and human DNA. Then it hit me like a tornado of otherworldly revelation. No, surely not, I argued with myself. It just can't be. Memories came flooding back of a boy I knew in school whom I had made fun of and ridiculed because he told me he'd seen a Bigfoot, and I had mocked him and teased him for his whimsical naivety. Now I was the one with egg all over my face. The creature in my lens was in no uncertain terms a Bigfoot. It could not be anything else, and it was as if the creature had stepped out of cryptozoology myths and legends into a blatant, clear and vivid reality. Bigfoot was real. I suddenly felt ashamed for the know-it-all mentality I had adopted throughout my school years. Now I began to realize that I did not know very much at all. I watched the creature as he moved with such fluidity, and as he walked, every stride he took was huge. It really was like watching a top predator moving with incredible grace. I marveled that something this gargantuan could move like this, and it was truly mesmerizing to watch. Then suddenly, like a jet plane about to take off, this creature leapt out of my view with an incredible speed, as if he'd revved up his engine and was gaining more momentum on the ground and was about to take off. I could not see the creature anymore, but I knew that he was in hunt mode and was probably chasing the herd of deer I had seen moments before. It seemed like seconds passed, and the Bigfoot came into view again, and I suddenly realized he was chasing after wild hog that I know from experience can be extremely aggressive. This was a wild goose chase if ever I saw one. I thought he had been after a herd of deer, but he had clearly stumbled across some wild hog along the path and was now changing tactics. Like a lion, he pounced on the creature, holding him down with his great girth in a crushing blow. I knew the hog must have been screaming, and I was glad not to be near enough to hear it. The Bigfoot, using one massive arm that bubbled with muscle, tossed a 400-pound hog in the air like it was a pizza. It landed on the ground with an almighty crush. If the hog wasn't dead before, it was definitely dead now, I thought. I watched the Bigfoot throw the limp body over his shoulders. Then he walked away into the undergrowth, leaving the way that he had come. It took me a long time to adjust to what I'd seen. Then I knew I had to make amends with my school friend I had relentlessly teased at school all those years ago for believing in these cryptid creatures that I now knew without a shadow of a doubt. This Bigfoot was real. "Hello," came the voice at the end of the line, Bruce speaking. "Hey buddy, it's Dwayne from high school, do you remember?" "Yeah," he said, "I remember you." "I phoned to apologize, buddy." "About what?" came the surprised voice. "Remember how I teased you at school about believing in Bigfoot?" "Oh yeah, that." "Well, you were right, he's real." "You've seen him too?" came Bruce's startled voice. I proceeded to tell him what had transpired in the last few minutes, and I could tell by the animated response that he was still as passionate about Bigfoot as he had always been. The biggest irony of all was that he was studying to be a cryptid zoologist. "Do you mind if I come over to your place?" he asked eagerly. "I'd like to see where it all happened and to take a look to see if there's any evidence." "Of course," I said. "I'm sure you know a lot more than I do, buddy," I said. "I must say I'm still in awe with what I've just seen, and more curious than ever." "That's what happens to a lot of people," said Bruce. "Once they've seen a Bigfoot, it changes everything, and people just become passionate about the creature, or so terrified that they never want to see it again. Either way, they are always curious to know more about the hairy man." "Why do you think that is?" I asked. "Well, I think people love mysteries, for starters," he said. "I know I do. And then there is the humanness to consider. I think the humanness about this creature that fascinates us, because it kind of makes the creature relatable to us." After a long conversation with Bruce, he arrived at my property within the hour, and I could see by the flushed look on his face that he was very excited to retrace the Bigfoot's movements that I had seen earlier. We wasted no time in examining the area with a fine-tooth comb, and we found the bloody spot where the hog had been flung to the ground. We noticed the ground was too dry and hard for any footprints of the creature, and so that was disappointing. Yet we could detect the rank odor or vile afterglow that hung in the air that is often associated with a Bigfoot encounter. We walked deeper into the woods, and Bruce told me to listen. "I cannot hear anything," I said. "That's my point. It's usually quiet when Bigfoot is around," said Bruce. "All the animals go quiet. Even the birds stop singing." As we walked into the woods, I had a distinct feeling we were being watched, and I knew that Bruce was feeling it too. It was like a gnawing feeling in your gut that is so unsettling that it brings on feelings of extreme nausea. I just knew I needed to leave, and that is what we did. We ended up having coffee up in my treehouse, and Bruce told me my treehouse was the most perfect place to spot a Bigfoot. All these years later, I live in my treehouse with my wife, but we have made some adjustments, like putting up a really great staircase that winds its way up to the tree and makes it much easier for access. I did see the Bigfoot one other time, but it was so brief. But I keep on watching, waiting and hoping for another encounter with the elusive hairy man. Bruce, the guy I teased mercilessly at high school, is now my very best friend. Isn't life ironic? And as for my fascination for Bigfoot, that increases every single day. I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you for your amazing story. Until next time, good night.